Information technology security managers consistently face challenges related to employees' failure to comply with information system security policies. It is estimated that poor employee IS security compliance, whether direct or indirect, causes over half of all system security breaches and is often due to employees' negligence or ignorance to IS security policies. Surprisingly, these employee violations occur regardless of the presence of IS security policies in staff. To address this problem, IS security researchers have traditionally utilized deterrence theory in order to explain why employees violate IS security policies. Deterrence theory is one of the most used theories concerning information system security policy compliance. According to this theory, policy violations reduce as stronger sanctions are implemented and as employees are more likely to be punished for their behavior. This occurs because individuals estimate the likelihood of being caught and the harshness of the related punishment before making the decision whether to break the rules. In this study, researchers Mikko Siponen and Anthony Vance build on deterrence theory to show how neutralization theory should also be applied when explaining why security policy violations occur by identifying how employees rationalize their behavior. Previous studies focused on the need to implement deterrence techniques such as formal and informal sanctions in order to reduce computer abuse and improve IS security policy compliance. Formal sanctions include rules, regulations, and laws, whereas informal sanctions include disapproval, embarrassment, and shame. Within deterrence theory, formal sanctions that have a high level of perceived severity and certainty are found to be more effective. For example, Straub and Nance found deterrence such as dedicating weekly hours to IS security, using multiple methods to distribute information about penalties and acceptable system use, and communicating clear penalties for violations were very effective for minimizing computer abuse. These deterrents become more effective as organizations increase the perceived certainty of sanctions by increasing one's risk of being caught, as well as increase the severity of sanctions by increasing one's perception that these sanctions were carried out. Moving to neutralization theory, deterrence theory falls short from eliminating many IS security policy violations, as fear of sanctions does not always best explain why these policies are violated. This can be explained by an individual's use of neutralization techniques to justify deviant behavior, thus giving them a temporary release from moral restraints such as formal and informal sanctions. Within this neutralization study, 6 techniques of neutralization were analyzed. Denial of responsibility, which occurs when one rationalizes that their actions were beyond their control and therefore are not responsible. An example of this is when employees claim that they did not comply with policies because that policy was unclear, or when programmers label their mistakes as computer errors. Denial of injury occurs when one argues that no one was actually hurt by their behavior. An example of this is when employees argue that violating IS security policies is okay if it does not, or at least does not seem to, directly hurt the company. Defensive necessity occurs when one claims that they had no choice but to engage in the misconduct. An example of this is when employees claim that tight deadlines make it impossible for them to comply with IS security policies. Condemnation of the condemners occurs when one justifies their actions by blaming those who are the target of the action. An example of this is in information security context would be when an employee claims it is not wrong to violate or shortcut security policies if they seem to be unreasonable. Appeal to higher loyalties occurs when one feels that they must violate one policy as a means to a justifiable end. An example of this is when one argues that they must violate one policy in order to finish their work. Lastly, metaphor of the ledger occurs when one believes that they have done enough good to offset or justify bad behavior. For example, when employees justify non-work-related web surfing following good job performance. To study whether or not neutralization positively affects intention to violate IS security policy, this neutralization study used a hypothetical scenario-based method. The authors presented administrative personnel from 3 different organizations with 3 randomly selected written descriptions of realistic situations describing an IS security policy that was violated. Then, participants were asked to rate how likely they were to commit the same policy violation as was described in the scenario. Results of the model isolating the deterrence theory constructs previously explained, formal sanctions and informal sanctions, showed that only informal sanctions significantly explain variance in the model. However, when the 6 neutralization techniques were included in the model, the significance of their effect on intention to violate IS security policies greatly increased, and the informal sanctions no longer had a significant effect on intention. Based on these results, neutralization was shown to be an excellent predictor of employee intentions to violate IS security policies. Conversely, formal and informal sanctions were not found to be effective at deterring employees from violating rules in the presence of neutralization, as this enables employees to violate policies while still viewing themselves as generally rule-abiding through justification. To combat neutralization techniques, this research suggests that organizations concerned with insider threats should establish training sessions to emphasize how injury may occur if a security policy is not followed, how there is no excuse for non-compliance to security policies, no matter how unclear or misunderstood these policies are, how tight deadlines should not be an excuse to violate policies, and how violation of any policy cannot be justified. Additionally, managers should make sure that team leaders do not encourage or support others that break security policies.